You have to think about your own mission, your own vision, and your own values that speak to you. And every decision that you make going forward has to kind of go back and does this fit with my mission and my vision and my values? When you start building that and you start sharing that on a social platform or your network or whatever, that's what you become known for.
Today's episode, we are interviewing Rhea Temmermand. I gave it a shot. So she's known as the CRNA Scientist on social media. She'll let you know that later in the episode. But I skipped her name when we first met because I didn't know how to say it. So I gave it a try there. Hopefully I'm close. But she is doing a lot of things scholastically, didactically. Clearly, that is a cup of tea that I was not meant for.
She's doing scholarly things.
She's very smart. Yeah. Anyway,
I think
stick around for this one. She talks about didactics and research and a lot of things.
I think Josh and I were at points during this episode, we were about as lost as we were when we were interviewing Sarah Wild, and she was talking about Botox. It was the same thing when she was talking about her doctorate program. It's a lot. I did not realize how much it takes to get this stuff done. So she is very much in a grinding phase of her career and just kind of doing behind the scenes work to make things better for everyone else. So pretty cool episode.
She is extremely smart, and she did a very good job of dumbing it down so people like us could understand.
And she talks about just being wild in college, so you'll have to listen to that.
Welcome to the Investing RN podcast. I'm Josh with my co-host Colin. We're here with the CRNA Scientist. Thank you for joining us. Why don't you talk a little about yourself here?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It is definitely a pleasure to be on your podcast today and speak to your audience. So I am well known as CRNA Scientist. My name is Rhea Temmermand, and I've been a CRNA for about 10 years now, but I've transitioned to working as a neuropharmacologist in the Philadelphia area. So I work mostly in a laboratory setting, still work clinically as a CRNA a couple times a month, teaching at a CRNA program, doing a lot more preclinical and translational research in a laboratory setting, doing drug discovery and pain research. So that's kind of a quick summary of what I'm doing right now.
Wow. And what led you into nursing in general? Like, did you know you always wanted to be a nurse and then anesthesia? Did you know the steps or like, what was your timeline on finding each?
Yeah. So I actually got lucky in that I found out about becoming a CRNA in my sophomore year of high school. So I was just happened to have a conversation with somebody that said, I'm going to go be a nurse anesthetist. And I said, what is that? Yeah. And learned a little bit about it. And my guidance counselor actually set me up with a shadowing opportunity in high school. So I learned about the profession pretty early on. And as soon as I started shadowing, I said, wow, this is it. This is really kind of checks all the boxes for me. So I went a much more traditional route where I entered nursing school right away, right out of high school, did the traditional 4-year BSN, worked for 2 or 3 years as an ICU nurse, and then applied straight to CRNA program. I knew pretty early on that it was a good fit. Yeah.
Where were you going to high school that you had a guidance counselor that was that on point with?
Believe it or not, like in the middle of the country too. Have you ever heard of you know where Gettysburg is at? Gettysburg, yeah. Pennsylvania. So there's a town that's near there, Hanover, Pennsylvania, kind of in the country. And it was just a good high school. And they set me up with a shadowing experience in York Hospital. York is in Pennsylvania, but York also has a CRNA program. They're a pretty decent CRNA program. So it just kind of worked out. Yeah. I feel like not very many people get lucky and get that kind of experience early on.
I've had a couple of students come with me as high schoolers, but when I was in high school, that was not, nobody was on top of it like that.
Yeah.
Did you know the provider you were shadowing, or was more a connection from your counselor?
No idea. Yeah.
Okay.
And I just remember the surgeons were asking such funny questions to me during, and they were kind of goofing off and they had little inside jokes. And I was so intimidated because I was like, wow, this is serious right now. This is surgery. And people were so, you know how we are in the operating room.
Oh yeah.
A bunch of goofballs, right? So I was like, yeah, this is definitely my place.
I'm sure you went home probably that same day and you like figured out what it was going to take to do anesthesia. Was that intimidating at all or not really? You're like, no, this is what I'm going to do. I don't care what it takes.
Yeah, I always believed that through hard work and setting myself up for the right opportunities and being open to opportunities that I could accomplish things that were challenging. I looked at the requirements and for me, it didn't seem super intimidating to eventually go to graduate school. So I also have extremely hyper planned my entire life. So I'm trying to, that's how I was in the early stages of my career. I'm trying to now be less like that and kind of take things as they roll. So yeah, I always believed that I could do it.
So you said in 10th grade that happened. Prior to that, did you have any ideas of what you were going to do? Because I mean, now with the academia, but then you said you felt the good fit in the operating room with the people and the way they were kind of all vibing. So it's like, it seems like you could have gone either way. Now you're more in the academia area, but prior to that, it seems like the OR would have been a good fit. So did you have a goal in mind before you came across CRNA?
I was raised in a military family. So pretty like more strict family. I had always moved my entire life. So as a child, I moved every 2 to 3 years. And that made me have a much more flexible personality that I could kind of roll with it. I think that learning about anesthesia and learning about nursing made me feel like I had the personality to do it because I had the discipline and the rigidness of kind of being raised in a military family, but also the flexibility of having to move and make friends. So I felt like my soft skills were pretty decent as far as communication, establishing rapport, those types of things, being able to network. I kind of had those skills from growing up. I felt like I would be a good fit for communicating with people, taking care of people, but also being in a more scientific type field. It's always a very curious person.
All right. So you said you worked as a nurse for a couple of years, and was it only in the ICU at I can't remember the hospital you said, was it Johns Hopkins?
Yeah. So knowing the requirements of anesthesia school was the critical care experience. I knew that in nursing school, it was vital for me to get that job right away. I wasn't going to waste my time with going to med surg. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but for me to get to that goal as fast as possible, I knew that I needed to go to the ICU right away. The problem with new grads is it's very difficult to land an ICU position, as you know, right out of school. So when I was in nursing school, we had a VA system in Pittsburgh. I went to the University of Pittsburgh, and they had an internship in the ICU. And I knew if I could land the internship, which was pretty competitive, but if I could land that internship, then that would open the doors to getting that ICU job right away. And it totally worked. So they only accepted 4 nursing students. And I was able to get that internship, and it paid pretty well. So it financially supported me for my last year of nursing school. And because of that internship, I was offered a job at Johns Hopkins Neuro ICU right away. And that kind of set me up to go apply directly to anesthesia school. Yeah.
Nice. And was it all in the neuro ICU? Is that what you said?
I did about probably a year and a half, almost 2 years in the neuro ICU. My spouse, who I was dating at the time, got into medical school in New Jersey. So I actually ended up moving there with him, but still commuting down to Baltimore during this time. It was kind of crazy.
Oh.
And I got off a one night shift, and on my way back to Jersey, fell asleep driving and completely totaled my car, and for some reason walked away from it unscathed. And I think that was enough for me to like, okay, you can't do this anymore. So I actually ended up switching to a surgical trauma ICU in Philadelphia. And I was there until I applied to their CRNA program at Jefferson. Mm-hmm.
Wow. Yeah, that'll do it, I guess, for a wake-up call.
Yeah. So I felt like I got lucky, but I'm probably not going to get lucky the second time. So might as well make a lifestyle change while I can. I really should have just broken up with him and stayed in Baltimore, but here we are 14 years later.
Sounds like it worked out.
Yeah.
That's
I don't think that's something that's talked about a whole lot, because the nurses, like the overnight shift, that's so common for nurses and, in the hospital and going home. Like there was plenty of times where I fell asleep. I never crashed, but there was plenty of times where I fell asleep, woke up and was like terrified because like anything can happen at that point.
Yeah. When you are tired, I've heard that it's almost worse than drinking, because at that point there's no slowing or braking. You're just going at it full force, right? And that's exactly what happened. When I was out, I was out.
So then you went to anesthesia school in Philadelphia, right? And was it a DNP program, a PhD? Like what did that?
No, I started that program in around 2010, 2011. So at the time, DNP was kind of just getting started. So it was a master's at the time. And I had been doing a lot of research in undergrad. I went to a school that was very research heavy, research oriented. So I did a lot of research projects then. And when I entered CRNA school, I wanted to continue doing that research again. My director at the time, she was not supportive of her students doing anything extracurricular outside of clinical. I wasn't even allowed to go to conferences. It was kind of crazy because, and I will say for those who are listening, that is not typical. Most directors are very supportive of their trainees going to conferences and doing things that are academic type, being a part of committees. So she was not supportive of me doing research, and I had to had to do it in secret. I had to sneak out of clinical, not sneak out of clinical. When clinical was finished, I would sneak over to a laboratory across the street that was a part of the same school, and then work in the laboratory in the afternoon without my director finding out, so that I can continue getting that type of experience. Yeah.
Did you ever get any reasons for, because other than just it being a major power trip, like why would your director not even want you to be spending time in research?
I don't know. It wasn't that I wasn't doing well in the program, because I had perfect grades in the program. So I think that the program was going through a lot of turmoil as far as faculty turnover. I think maybe there was just a fear of people getting distracted and not doing well in clinical. I have no other. I'm trying to give her the benefit of the doubt and say that she, not say that she's being a complete hater and not supporting, but it is what it is. Like I said, most directors are not like that. Most directors are very supportive of that type of activity.
I think most students aren't sneaking out to do research either.
I can see a premium being put on like you're learning your skills, like intubating and all these other things, but like to actually prevent you from doing anything else, that just doesn't even make sense.
Yeah, I don't know, but the lab experience was invaluable because it has helped set up my current career now, having that experience. So I'm glad that I was a little bit of a rule bender back then.
Yeah. Well, so you did anesthesia for, did you say 10 years or 15 years? Yeah.
Yeah. So I've now been a CRNA for about 10 years.
10 years. Okay.
Working in a level 1 trauma center, doing every single kind of case you could think of, from cranies to hearts to neonates, doing cases in the NICU. I'm doing 24-hour trauma call independently. So I've definitely been around the block as far as cases are concerned.
Yeah.
Probably a couple years into being a CRNA, I got to the point where I wanted to start doing research again, but I'd never led a project from idea to publication. I'd always been a part of people's projects, assisting with projects or managing projects, but I never actually built one from the ground up. So that's when I started getting interested in, is it possible for me to do this? And what does that look like? What kinds of questions could I ask, and how could I answer those questions? So I started building a research team at the hospital that I was at. I was the PI. I had a couple anesthesiologists, a couple CRNAs, and a couple research assistants. And we built this trial for postoperative cognitive dysfunction, recruited patients, the whole nine, published the work. And that was really fun. I had a great time doing that. And I felt like I wanted to keep building those skills, but I needed more training. I didn't know how to analyze my data. I had to send my data to a biostatistician. I really needed a lot of help designing clinical trials. So that's when I decided to leave bedside and apply to a PhD program.
Now, so I guess once you left the PhD program, were you still practicing regularly, or did you cut back on that?
I'm still in the PhD program.
Oh, you're still doing that? Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah. I'm in my fourth year of it. Most PhD programs in the sciences are about 5 to 6 years long, full time.
After a master's.
Yeah, it's intense. It's a big commitment for your family too. A lot of people throw around the idea of doing a PhD, and I definitely say it is not just a commitment from you; it's a commitment from your whole family. Everybody has to be on board. There were definitely nights in my first and second year that my husband was just bringing me plates of food because I just wouldn't leave the room that I was doing work in. The level of the work was way more intense than CRNA school, and CRNA school is intense already.
Well,
yeah,
that's what I'm thinking. Like after going through CRNA school, why would you put yourself through this? Like what's the?
No, I know you have to really want to do it, and I don't think people give it enough thought as to. There are many times where I'm like, why am I doing this? I don't have to do this. I can make more money by not doing this. There's a lot of moments where you're like doubting your decisions. But at the end of the day, this is where I belong. I'm an academic. I am always curious, always asking questions and trying to find solutions to problems. So it's definitely where I fit in.
Do you miss anything from just being a CRNA working? Well, I mean, like just not going through this whole PhD thing, but working your shifts in the OR, doing the trauma, all that kind of stuff. Do you miss that at times? Do you ever think about going back? I mean, I know you said you think about, but obviously you're not going to, but do you miss aspect of it?
Yeah, no, I definitely have moments where I miss doing shift work, because once you become an academic, there is no more shift work. You are always working, and you always have tasks that need to be done. There's always writing to be done. There's always, committee work to do, teaching to do. And I do miss that when I was working as a CRNA. Once I went home, I had nothing to do except to enjoy. I definitely miss working out a lot more, being more regimented with my workouts and whatnot. So there's like a couple aspects that I miss, but I know that if I went back full time as a clinical CRNA, I would miss being an academic for sure. I don't want to use the word boredom because that's not it, but I need constant stimulation. I need to constantly be doing something.
Traumas just aren't enough, huh?
I mean, my wife said the similar thing. Obviously, I'm not getting my PhD and doing that stuff, but we started investing in real estate, and now it's like I do anesthesia still, but when I'm home, I'm doing something else. There's always something to be done. It's
always something.
You can never complete what you're supposed to do because there's always more to do.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds like you're in the middle of that.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, what does your day look like right now? Like, can you kind of walk us through like a typical day?
Oh yeah,
if there was one.
Yeah, well, yeah, you're right about that. There is no typical day in academia. I would say that most days I wake up around 4 a.m. because my kids wake up at 6 a.m. So if I can get up at 4 a.m., that gives me the opportunity to do either 2 hours of academic work or maybe do a 30 to 45 minute workout and then about an hour of academic work. And it could even be as simple as cleaning out my emails, whatever, just to get set up for the day. I take care of my kids until they go on the bus, and my husband leaves early. He's a surgeon, so he leaves early so that he can take care of them in the afternoon. So that's kind of how we have it arranged. I do morning, he does evening. So after they go on the bus, I used to just leave and go straight to work, and it's about an hour commute. But lately, I've been trying to protect my mental health a little bit more by not dealing with that crazy like Philadelphia traffic. So I've actually been staying home and scheduling meetings in the morning, Zoom, so that I can shift about an hour and go in a little bit later to miss that traffic. I'm a lot happier that way. I show up to work not as stressed out. When I'm at work now at Drexel University, I'm in the pharmacology department, a lot of my day surrounds doing experiments. The experiments could be molecular or they could be with animals. An example of a molecular experiment might be a simple example might be to do protein quantification on a tissue sample. So we have different assays that do that. That's probably a simple way. It could be slicing brains and staining brain slices. The animal side of it, because I'm a pain researcher, there's not a lot of cell work that we can do in pain research because cells can't tell us that they're in pain. You can have cell pathology in one human or animal, and then a cell pathology, the same exact cell pathology in another human or animal, and one has pain and one doesn't have pain. So it's really hard to tell just from cell culture how to do pain research. Most of our pain research has to be in an animal, unfortunately. And that's kind of the dirty side of doing pain research, is that you have to instill pain into an animal, do your experiments with the animal, and then euthanize that animal. And that whole time, the animal can't have additional pain medications, because what we do is we create new pain medications. So we're in a drug discovery lab. And so most of my day is doing those types of experiments, those types of behavioral experiments. I usually have other meetings throughout the day where I'm either in journal club, I'm mentoring students, I'm being mentored myself. So there's a lot of that. I do a lot of writing. So I'll try to squeeze in writing throughout the day, whether it's grant writing, writing for manuscripts, like for journals. I'm currently writing a textbook, so I'm always editing that. And then usually my day wraps up around 6 or 7. I'll commute back home, try to help out as much as I can. My husband used to be a chef, so he's usually got the dinner thing kind of sorted out. And after the kids go to bed, I try to do a little bit more work on my laptop, and I try to go to sleep around 9:30, 10. That's like the day is jam-packed. So it's like that 7 days a week, unless I intentionally take a mental health day off. So I'll just keep doing that until I feel that I'm getting a little burnt out. Now, audience members, I don't recommend doing this. This is just a phase that I'm in right now. But I'll usually
when you were in high school.
Yeah, I can usually do that schedule for about 10 to 14 days straight until I need to take an afternoon off. So that's kind of what my schedule is like right now.
Does that change significantly once you complete your PhD? Or is that basically your schedule indefinitely?
I think that just depends on what I want to do afterwards. If I want to stay in academia and be a PI, I think it'll always be like that. If I want to do something else, maybe work for a company, run my own company, or have more of a teaching position, I might be able to cut back a little bit. But right now, I'm happy. I'm busier, but I'm happy. So I'm okay with it.
When you say company, is that like your own like research company, or what would that look like?
Yeah. So I'm actually building a company right now with another CRNA, and none of the details are public yet, so I can't really talk too much about it. But I would say it's in the realm of science and education. And that company is going to be launched next July.
Is that just something you just had too much free time, so you just wanted to throw something else in there?
I think the part of the reason why we started the company is that I wanted to have more options for income besides putting in hours. That's kind of like the point of what you guys do, right? Is trying to come up with other ways to make money and support yourself besides doing shifts. And science definitely doesn't pay, to be a scientist. I mean, as a scientist now, probably make half of what I made as a clinical CRNA. And I can get away with that because my spouse has been able to finally, make up that salary. But if I wasn't married to somebody that could, then this would be a pretty hard lifestyle. So I think part of the company reason is to, have other streams of income, but also use my talents and passions to provide for our profession. So if I share any more, I think I'd be giving away the company, but I am excited to launch it. And my business partner has tremendous skills and strengths in areas that I don't have. So I think we make a really good pair.
Yeah. So that's one thing you mentioned earlier. Like the point of this podcast is to give people ideas for additional income, whether you're in my avatar, which is you just get trapped in working extra shifts. Like it's extra money, but you only make money when you're doing these extra shifts, working yourself into the grave per se. Or if you're in Colin's avatar, like he's a nurse, he's been able to exceed his income outside of nursing that he was previously making. He's able to step away completely.
Yeah.
So there's two avatars that we want to speak to, and that's definitely it's the goal is to increase your outside income so you can either slow down or just enjoy the extra income.
I just don't want any of my future decisions to be based around money, if that kind of makes sense. Like I don't want to say, well, I'm not going to take this job because this other job pays 10,000 more. I want to take the job that's a good fit that I enjoy and not have to worry about that. The other part of it is I want a business that can be run anywhere that I have internet. So I'm not geographically tied to one location. I can, if I wanted to take a year and live in Barcelona and work from my laptop, I could do that. So that's part of the motivation too, is the ability to start and stop your clinical work or your career whenever you want, because now you have a little bit more freedom, more flexibility.
Yeah, definitely. And so at what point, so you were working as a CRNA full-time for a while. At what point did you decide that it was probably the right time to stop doing that? Well, not completely. You said you pick up shifts every once in a while. But at what point did you realize, like, this is not what I want to be doing forever? I got to do something else.
I was sitting in the break room with a CRNA. This was in Georgia. And he was a faculty member at Augusta University. I'll give him a shout out. Rhea Temmermand. He's an awesome guy. And I was telling him some of my ideas in academia, and he said, why don't you just come give a guest lecture? I'm like, okay, sure. I'll give a guest lecture. And I forget I think it was like out of OR anesthesia, like kind of nothing like too complicated. So I gave that lecture and I liked it. And then I worked in the simulation lab for a little bit, enjoyed that. They paid me as an adjunct. And I really liked the research thing. I'm like, I think that I want to give it a try. Because what's the worst that can happen? I could completely hate it, and we have a wonderful career to fall back on. I'll say that loosely, fall back on, But, I think that being a CRNA gives you so much flexibility to try things. And if they don't work, you have a great backup. You have a way to always make money. So I just went for it, and I ended up going to an open house at a PhD, like a PhD nursing open house. That was like the first thing that I ended up doing. And I was telling them about all my ideas, had these great ideas. I thought they were great. And telling them about my research, what I was doing. And they were like, that's not nursing. What do you mean it's not nursing? I'm a nurse. And you know how it is being in anesthesia, right? You're kind of like an in-betweener. Like nobody wants us, right?
It's always anesthesia.
Yeah, exactly. So I didn't want to get discouraged by that, but I definitely thought, well, I need to be creative and look outside of nursing. And that's when I thought, I like science. Let me try science. Like, I'm not terribly qualified to apply, but, let me just go to their open house. And met with the program director of the pharmacology program at Drexel, and told him all, same thing, ideas, whatever. And he's like, you would be a great fit. I'm like, really? And he's like, you just bring so much diversity. We've never even considered accepting a nurse or a clinician. Like nobody's ever applied. And he's like, you just bring a lot of ideas, and we'll teach you everything you need to know. Lab work, don't worry about it. we can teach you that. You have great recommendations. You look like you are good at project management, putting together ideas and seeing a project all the way through. So they took a chance on me, and I felt like same thing. What do I have to lose? I'll get started, and if I hate it, I can leave. And yeah, it's been 4 years now, 4 solid years of doing the program, and it's been awesome.
That's great. Yeah. And not just anesthesia and CRNAs, like even nursing is a good enough job to where if you try something else, you know, you can always fall back on
100%.
that decent income.
Yeah.
It's a very large safety net for you to be able to try other things.
100%. And I always tell people too, don't let your license lapse. I never, even when I went back to my PhD program, I think a lot of people expected me to just quit and do that full time. I kept working even during times where I'm like, gosh, I need to like really focus on class. I did the bare minimum hours that I needed to do to keep my license because I always wanted to have that backup. I never wanted it for me to have no options. So I'd say like definitely whatever you need to do to keep up that license, do it.
Yeah. I mean, my wife's also a nurse and she's out of it right now too, but we've both kept our license current. And we're per diem at a couple places if we need to. But yeah, right. just to have that backup plan, I feel like it allows you to be a little more adventurous with like whatever you're pursuing. So it is definitely a great benefit of nursing.
Yeah. Yeah. It also helps support your own businesses and ventures too. So say if I need a little bit more capital, I just calculate that in shifts. I'm like, all right, that's 3 shifts, or I want to go on vacation. That's 2 shifts. So it's helpful for those types of things too, for like quick money.
I think I've mentioned this before, but I was talking to a guy out of California, and he said the more income he made outside of the hospital, the more he enjoyed his work inside the hospital. Yeah. So even if you don't ever plan on leaving, like the amount of enjoyment you have is when you don't have to be doing it. You can actually choose to do that rather than being forced to.
Yeah. I actually really enjoy my shifts now because that's part of it. But also, I feel like my shifts, as you become more experienced as a CRNA, it's not that you don't think anymore. It's that you become so good at what you do that it's like riding a bike. Like it's just second nature, you know? Even though I'm not in the OR as much anymore, it's so much fun because I could still see that my skills have been maintained. I could still intubate. I could still put in lines. I could still do these complex cases. So I definitely enjoy picking up shifts now. Much more than before, because before it's like you're reliant on it for your income, so it doesn't become it's not as fun anymore. But yeah, it's much better now. Yeah,
I might have to pick up a shift. I had a dream last night that I was working in the hospital and I couldn't start an IV, so I might have to pick up some shifts.
Oh, ER nurse? No way. That's never gone away.
Colin prides himself on being able to start an IV in a rock, so that's a nightmare.
I don't know. After this dream, I'm a little suspicious of my skills.
That's so funny.
I'm sure they're still there.
Yeah, I would have nightmares in CRNA school about sleeping in. That was always my nightmare. My nightmare was always that I would sleep in and I would show up to the room late, and my preceptor would already have the room set up. I had that nightmare for 3 years straight. So I never actually like felt like I really slept. I kind of just like laid there with like my eyes kind of like halfway open. Didn't want that to actually happen.
That tracks for the college girl sneaking out to the lab. So that makes sense.
That's funny.
Yeah. So I work in critical access hospitals where there's like a ton of call. And that's always one of my fears is that my phone ringer will be low and I won't hear the call and something. So that's a stress that not a lot of people understand, but it's there and it's real.
And then having kids on top of that.
Oh yeah.
We are the lightest sleepers now, you know, just from the call, the kids, everything.
How many kids?
We have 2.
Sounds like that's enough.
Yeah, I think so. I'm getting old and tired. It's like, you know, you become an adult, you know, you try to think, okay, when does somebody become an adult? And I think for me, it's like one day you get sleepy and you just stay sleepy until you die. That's definitely happened to me. You know, just, I don't know. I don't think that I could like mentally handle going through that again. So we got a dog instead. We're happy.
Nice. Yeah. I think based on that, I'm an adult now then. I've been having a hard time with feeling like an adult, but based on that definition, I'm there.
All right. So we're going to go ahead and move on to the final four. I don't know if you're familiar with Bigger Pockets, but they're a big podcast in the real estate space. And they have a final four. So it's the final four questions that we're going to go ask you. And the first one is, what's a top financial resource that you found for nurses, whether it's a book or a podcast or something that's specific for nurses?
Well, I don't know if this person that I have in mind is not specific for nurses, but I would say it's anybody who is wanting to get into more entrepreneurial mindset. I love this guy, and his name is Ryan Daniel Moran. He is the owner of capitalism.com. He has an amazing podcast, and I stumbled upon him actually through trying to find an ebook to read. And I kind of typed in entrepreneurial type ebooks, and he has a book that's called 12 Months to 1 Million. So I listened to that book on a commute, and then I started listening to his podcast, and I just love the way he thinks. He's so creative. He had a podcast one time that was 10 ideas on how to make $100 million. And the ideas were so wild. Like, you wouldn't actually do those things. But the point of the podcast was to think really mega big, because if you don't think about setting mega goals, you never think mega big. And so for me, how that changed my mindset was I always kind of set goals that I knew that I could attain. So, and then I would attain them, and great. It would be a little anticlimactic because I knew I could do it. Now I'm setting goals. I'm like, I'm not sure if this is ever going to happen because they're so lofty. But I think that the way he thinks, this big mindset, that it gets you to probably expand and push yourself a little bit more than you would have normally. So I just love him, and I love all this content. But a lot of his stuff is how to start from scratch to be an entrepreneur, how to kind of think about your audience and your product and your mindset. So I love that resource. I think that people would find a lot of value in it.
I have not heard of that, but that actually sounds great.
Yeah, you would really enjoy it. His podcast, and the guests on his podcast are really awesome. I'm trying to remember the one guest that I really enjoy, the Hermosies.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So like Layla was on his podcast, and then that's how I kind of discovered her, and I really like her too. The way her mindset. Yeah. And so it's like less about the 1, 2, 3 skills and more about the way you think. You know, and that can be applied to any industry.
Well, that's a good one. For the second one, what would you tell yourself as a new grad? That can be, you can choose if you want that to be new grad nurse or new CRNA, but what would you tell yourself?
I would say 2 things. The first thing that I wish I did in the beginning was I wish that I stayed more involved in my state and national organization right out of school. I think that I was involved, and then I got a little overwhelmed working as a new grad for the first couple years. So I didn't really do any of that. And I think that was a big mistake. And I would definitely encourage all people to, even in small ways, contribute towards your PAC and be involved at the state level, even attend meetings. So I would definitely say definitely stay involved in the profession. The second thing that I would tell myself is to network a lot more in those beginning stages. I think that I missed out on a lot of networking opportunities in the beginning because my mindset really wasn't open to those opportunities at the time. But I think that you really, in any profession, you really don't reach your full potential unless you are meeting the right people and being intentional with the networking. Really figuring out who you want to meet and finding a way to do it. I consider myself, people are always really surprised about this, but people think that I'm an extrovert, and I'm actually not. I'm an introvert. And networking for me is extremely exhausting. I could spend the whole day, I could be really energetic, but that's not how I energize. I like to be by myself. So figuring out the strategies as an introvert to network took a lot of work. So I actually read this book called The Introvert's Edge to Networking. And that has helped me immensely. I use a lot of those techniques in that book. they work 100%.
I had to write that down because I'm a little bit of an introvert as well, but
Yeah. It what it basically tells you, it's like, if you're not the person that likes to work a room, here are some strategies that are meant for a person like you. And like I said, it's more targeted. I'll give you an example. If you have somebody that you want to meet at an upcoming event, wouldn't it be nice when you saw them to continue a conversation you already started, rather than that being the first time you have that conversation? It then teaches you a strategy to reach out to that person ahead of time to start the conversation. And so when you meet, you're continuing the conversation. And so that's like a second touch point. Then when you're following up, that's your third touch point. It really kind of solidifies that, rather than you meeting them for the first time by bombarding them at a conference. That works great. So that's like one of like many, many tips that the book gives.
We'll have to get that in the show, link to that in the show notes, because I think that would be helpful.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. Question 3. What is your big goal for the next 12 months and how can we help you get there?
I have 3 main goals for the next 12 months. The first, obviously, is to finish my PhD. I'm pretty close to being done. I'm just in my thesis work right now, finishing up all that. The second goal is I'm almost finished writing this science textbook that I'm writing with Dr. Edwin Oroki at UAB. That has been something our profession has needed for a long time, is some kind of chemistry physics book that is specifically made for CRNAs. So I've been working on that project for about 2 years now, and we have a writing team of, close to like 60 or 70 CRNAs around the country. And we have a pretty big publisher for that. So that will be done in the next 12 months. So I'm excited about that. And probably the thing I'm most excited for is to launch the company that I'm kind of hinting at. So yeah, so I guess the thing that you guys can do to help me out, or anybody, is to just let people know that there's a CRNA out there that is into science education and wants to help better the profession by providing excellent resources for trainees, for clinicians who want to go to grad school and who are trying to get through grad school. Yeah, sharing my Instagram. My Instagram handle is kind of where I share a lot of that content. And that's actually where we met, Josh, was through Instagram. So definitely give me a follow at CRNA_Scientist.
And then next, what July, we'll have you back on to talk all about your company.
I would love that. Yeah. And I'll bring my business partner on too. Her name is Sachi Lord. She's a CRNA in Hawaii.
Was she on the main island, or was she?
No, she lives in Oahu, but she did have family in Maui. They're okay, but that's good. Yeah. They actually have she owns an Airbnb in Oahu, and she actually is having like Maui family come stay there for free now. Cool. So trying to help rebuild.
Well, the last question here, if you were to tell people one thing to do right now, because our name is the Investing RN, which is registered nurse, but it's also for like right now for immediate action. What's the one thing you would tell them to do right now to, I guess, change their financial future?
I think that this can be applied to anything that you want to do, including financial. The financial future part is, it is never too early or too late to build your self-brand. I think that's really, people don't think about that enough. Building your self-brand is very similar to building a brand, like a business brand. You have to think about your own mission, your own vision, and your own values that speak to you. And every decision that you make going forward has to kind of go back and, does this fit with my mission and my vision and my values? When you start building that and you start sharing that on a social platform or your network or whatever, that's what you become known for. And so when opportunities arise, because I'm sure you've heard of the term, like, the riches are in the niches. Yeah. So when you start becoming known for something specific, when people think of opportunities, you're always the first person that kind of comes to mind, because you've now built this brand of who you are as a person. I think that has helped me tremendously, from deciding, okay, my brand is going to be, CRNA Scientist. My mission is to educate and inspire future clinicians and scientists to consider academic careers or to become the very best clinicians that they can be. So my vision is to create pipeline programs to get more people early on into these types of fields and professions. My values are, I want to meet learners where they're at. I want to have entertaining education. I want to be creative and innovative, but I also want to maintain academic integrity. So when I think about those things and I think about my decisions moving forward, do they align? And that becomes your self-brand, right? And that's what you become known for. That's what people think of. That can be applied to anything. So if your self-brand is going to be what you guys are, RNs or CRNAs that are financially focused, and you start building your own brand, all your decisions kind of funnel into that. Yeah. You start figuring out who your audience is, and then I think that you start becoming well-known.
That's pretty solid. If we talked to you 3 years ago, that would have been helpful.
I'm always still working on mine too, and it's always a moving needle. It's never going to be rigid and solid. You have to always be flexible with who you are too as a person. Yeah. So that's the advice I would definitely give for people right now.
Great, and you kind of already explained your Instagram handle. But our last question is, where can people find you? So it's one more time. It's the CRNA_Scientist. Is that right?
Yep. At CRNA_Scientist. I'm most active on Instagram, and that's the platform that I enjoy using the most. Of course, I'm on other platforms too with the same handle on Facebook. I think what people may or may not realize also is that each social media platform has a different audience. So the way that you kind of portray yourself on each social media platform may be a little bit different. I see Facebook as more of the clinical CRNAs and the faculty are on there. Instagram seems to have a little bit of mix of everybody, but lots of trainees, lots of residents, lots of people that want to go. TikTok's just wild. TikTok's like, I have one, but it's TikTok's like scary. Most of the scientists are actually on Twitter or X. They're mostly that like med-sci. Twitter's also wild and unhinged. So I feel like Instagram's a nice balance of like having the audience that may be a little bit nicer to content creators.
Well, yeah. Well, thanks for joining us, and this has been awesome.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.